All right. Feel free to kick things off, Jesse.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for taking your time out of your day, evening, whatever it is, to check this presentation out on Ludus and Automate Home Lab. So I'll just go right into it. First off, who's even talking to you? So, hi, I'm Jesse. Uh, I look like this. Uh, Behind me is a bunch of certifications and like degrees. Nowadays, I just tinker around with a bunch of stuff and try to improve my company's security. In which they have an added benefit of me tinkering around off hours to show them real cool defense. So yeah, that oh geez, so I accidentally clicked on my LinkedIn. But anyways, here's my LinkedIn. Um, you can find more information about me on LinkedIn. You can scroll down and you can even see like lately, I actually did this PRCCDC thing. So in the community, I do a bunch of stuff. This is a collegiate cyber defense competition, which the whole United States kind of participates in universities and colleges. They're broken out into regions, and you can think of it as like a Super Bowl doing different playoffs, and then it culminates in Texas for like the Super Bowl of where students protect enterprise systems against like hackers, but they also get these cool like injects of like, hey, this is we need a log server, so go build us one, right? And they get graded off that. Or there's like a team of users that like call them up and say, hey, I'm trying to get to this website, and they just do like user things and they're graded on like their customer support. So a pretty cool thing to get involved. You could look through my experiences and all that kind of stuff. But here's my 57 certifications if you're interested in my past stuff. But let's get back here and hopefully I don't click on that. That's how I accidentally clicked on that. So anyways, you can go to LinkedIn later, check out some things. If you find things interesting in there, just let me know. I'd love to chat about it and help, any way I can. So, what is Ludus? You're like, yeah, automate a home lab with what? What is this Ludus thing? Um, we'll go into that, but also on the agenda is why? Why Ludus? Why would we even want to do this? And then we'll go into what I have, which is not some like beefy server in Iraq, not in AWS. We'll go into what I have. And lastly, we'll talk about what I ended up with. And spoiler alert, it's on a Nook. And I thought I was buying like a little tiny mini Nook, but it ended up being a little bit bigger. Definitely much smaller than my current PC, but it was definitely a big surprise. But that's all good. So we'll get into this um, now. So Ludus is from this group called Bad Sector Labs. So I'll click on it. You can go to the GitLab, and right here is Ludus. So this is the GitHub that you would get everything from. And really what it is this easy to use automating a cyber lab that can also automate a bunch of ranges in it. And so if you've never created a lab, or you're like, you know what, I don't like my lab and I want to make a brand new one, this is a great way to do a couple, to shave down the hours that it would take to build a lab. Personally, I've rebuilt my Proxmox lab for various reasons, like a hard drive failure, uh, uh, migrating to a new version, all sorts of stuff. And this would have been great if I would have known how to just automate it. So basically, that's what Ludus is this automation framework to deploy stuff fast. And we'll dig deeper into that, but that's just kind of like a high level deal. And
Hey,
then,
Jesse.
yeah.
Do you mind for the folks that are new? Can you talk about maybe some benefits of why you might want to have a home lab?
Oh, so many different benefits. So one of the benefits is if you want to do your own pen testing, right? Have your own lab with a bunch of pen testing things in there to just practice. pen testing. The other reason could be for work. Your work, you do like digital forensics, incident response. And let's say, the latest thing that came out, like what we heard earlier with PanOS and Putty, and you want to test that. You're like, well, let's see, how that actually looks from an attacker's point of view, and then let's follow up and do like some forensics on it in a nice, safe environment. Isolated and secluded from your corporate environment. This is another place you can use Ludus, or you could just be someone that just wants to just like have an automated. So like if I go Proxmox, we're just gonna go off-roading right now. So like for instance, this is my Proxmox at home, and I've got like DFIR stuff. I have like Empire stuff, various Linux servers if I just want to build whatever, like experiment on Docker. Like maybe I don't know how Docker works, so I'll just spin up a thing and play with Docker. Or I'll try to do Ansible on something. Or, there's just so many things you can do with a home lab. It's just the sky's the limit, really. Sean, is there anything you would add to that? Because there's so much.
Oh yeah, I mean, that was great. I think yeah, just trying to recreate things in a safe environment. A lot of folks getting started. One thing, at least on my end, was building up Active Directory domains that I could go and blow up and get my hands dirty, like learning my way around Windows, building out file servers, things like that. It's quite endless. Then you have the whole networking side of things with virtualizing networking equipment. It's a whole other can of worms. But yeah, if anybody has any questions and wants to take this further, feel free to reach out in the channel.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Sean. Yeah, and to add to that, what I'm showing right here is like I mentioned earlier I do some CCDC stuff. So this is I built out a PR CCDC environment before I actually built it out for them. So I made my own AD, I made Exchange, I made MySQL, a share, a file server, all sorts of stuff. And then when I got it perfectly, like perfect, then I was able to recreate that in a real production environment. So cool. Well, let's go on to the next thing, which is why. Okay, why get Ludus? Why make it automate? Well, maybe you need to update to the latest 8 something of Proxmox software like I needed to do. So like I have this really old, like probably over 11 or 12-year-old desktop, and I cannot go to the latest 8 point whatever. So I needed to buy something else like the Nook that I mentioned earlier. And then, well, doing something automated would be great in that scenario. Uh, so my current hardware won't let me. I need to automate, so I touched on all these things. Also, it allows you, or it produces templates for you. So like Windows 11, like Windows servers, I believe a Debian and Ubuntu template, so that you can just kind of right click and say clone this, and basically you have the same image each time. It's pretty pretty cool to get up and going fast in that environment. So that's some of the whys. There's so many whys though out there. Kind of what we talked about earlier. There's all those other whys. So, oh yeah, and then like for instance, I have workshops that I create, and so one of my workshops I do is Atomic Red Team, and I like to have this on my Nook. I could potentially take this somewhere and hook it up and locally run the workshop versus right now I do various things. And one of the things is I have a CloudFormation template that I just spin up in AWS like an environment, and then I do my Atomic Red Team up there. Or I actually have another thing called Splunk Attack Range that I also spin up into AWS and then allow everybody to connect to that. But that gets a little costly. I believe the last time I did AWS, and I did about 15 Windows 2022 for 4 hours for 2 days, so 8 hours. I think it cost me like $60 or something. So if you have your home lab, that obviously is not going to cost money other than what you put into it initially. So that's another reason why. So cool. Oh yeah, so here's what it looks like. This is what I have. I have actually two. One you saw just a moment ago here on the left, and then another one on the right. As you can see, they're both version 7.4, which no, we want 8. So I'm going to end up backing up all these VMs onto like a file share, and then I'm going to basically use Ludus and build everything automagically, and then go ahead and restore from backup, and then get all my VMs up and going. And it'll be super fast and painless. I think one time it took me like 2 days in my early days to reinstall Proxmox and install all my VMs. I mean, it was full days. My family did not appreciate that. So that's another thing. This will help you have more time with your family. Or not, I guess, if you spend too much time with it. Don't spend too much time in your virtual environment, although it can be fun. Just so you know what it looks like. So here's my really old machine. Uh, it's if you want it, you could get it, but it doesn't really upgrade to the latest version. So I would say I wouldn't. Although it was great for like, I don't know, spinning up over like 10 machines. It was great with CPU. I put extra storage in it, terabytes, and I had 64 gigs of RAM. And so it did well. The other box I have that you saw version 7 on is this box, and much cheaper, and it actually does upgrade to 8. So super cool. You could totally, for on the cheap, get something like this on eBay. I just looked it up like the other day, and yeah, you could grab one of these for $70. Probably have to add some storage. Probably have to add some RAM, but it's doable to get you going. So what I have now though is way more money. It's like $700. Nobody wants to buy that. Um, but I had other ideas, right? Like my portable workshop idea is what I like. And so I thought I'd get it. Again, I thought I was getting a really smaller one, really small that I could put in my backpack. I can still put this one in my backpack, but not as well as like the other mini ones out there. But anyways, so that I put that book up against it so you can kind of see how big it is, and then you can see my old machine behind it and how tall it is too. It's really tall, but that's the one it's going to replace um, after all this. So cool, that's great. So what did I end up with? Basically, by the end of this, you would have uh, basically all these templates here. So Debian looks like 11 and 12, a Kali box, which hasn't always been easy to build on a Proxmox, by the way. You used to have to like convert it to you had to do some things, but it's getting easier. Windows 11, and there's the Windows Server right there. So again, you could right click on any of these templates and spin up machines. Super cool. So what you're seeing here in the green though is actually what it comes with by default. By default, it comes with an Active Directory, a Windows 11, a Kali box, and a router for its first range config. So that's what that looks like. We'll go into the other ranges they have. They have quite a few ranges on how to spin up different ranges. So we'll go into that a little bit later. But I love this Ludus product. So how will we do this? Hey, we'll do it through Ludus. We'll automate. So if anybody's taken my workshops before, that's basically, I actually didn't mention that this is a workshop. So hey, guess what? This is a workshop. So I put this all in Notion. I really like Notion. And so what I'll do here is I'll provide these slides later. But if you click on Notion, it'll open it up. This is public, it's on the internet. If you feel free, you could just type all that if you wanted, but I'll put all this information in the meetup text. So cool. So here it is. Proxmox in Notion. This is my workshop. So kind of the goal to this is to automate for the first time the deployment of Proxmox and make it easy to build virtual machines from it. So that's pretty much the deal. And so the requirements is really 2 Debian 12 machines. So one being what you're going to put Proxmox on eventually, and another one just some Debian virtual machine somewhere where we'll do some extra things. It'll make more sense later. Another one of the requirements, oh, I see. One of the Debian machines is hardware for the Proxmox auto deployment. So I do kind of explain that a little bit. And so these are the 2 things you would need. The GitLab that I showed earlier and getting an ISO for the Debian 12. And so I've linked the links here so you could go to the different pages. And I specifically use the AMD 64 full DVD set. So on Notion, typically I break things into labs. So here you'll see we won't be able to get through all these labs, I don't think. Maybe. We'll see. So on lab 1, I go through like ridiculous amount of screenshots and installing Debian. Then lab 2, I go into actually installing Ludus, which then brings us to lab 3, where we have to go onto a different, and I purposely say go onto a different Debian box because I don't know how many times I screwed up by not doing that. And I'll show you the pitfall in that. And then last, you have to build the template, which will build that default config that I mentioned and showed earlier of the range, and then how to deploy the range, and then alternate ranges, and then some extra materials. So here we go. So installing. So I'm going to just do a little bit of hand waving here and fast forwarding because I'm hoping everybody knows how to install this. Or if you don't, I do have this nice here, copy this, you know, go here, you know, place the 12.5 ISO on perhaps a Ventoy, and then I provide the link to it. Ventoy is something you would put on this USB that I have sticking in my Nook, and it allows you to just throw ISOs in it. Like you could put the Debian ISO, you could put a Proxmox ISO, you could put all the different ISOs on it. And when you boot from it, it'll give you a menu. This isn't the menu, but it'll give you a menu that it'll have all those ISOs, and you just select one of the ISOs you want to install. I selected Debian 12, and then you just install from there kind of thing. So yeah, if you haven't had a chance, take a peek at Ventoy. Let's see if I can see screenshot. Okay, yeah, so this is what it looks like when you first like boot up. You boot up, you can get this menu, and so like there'll be a Windows 10 or Windows 8 or a server 2012 or 20, you know, that kind of deal. So that's what you would see from that. But for us, we went ahead and we did the Debian 12, specifically 12.5 from that USB. And then there's a little bit of gotchas. Once you run through all these graphical, there's a bunch of stuff you go through here, and basically next, next, next kind of a deal. And then eventually you get into the GUI. Once you're in the GUI, we have to edit the sudoers file. Okay, so we got to get it. We got to be root. We got to do this vi sudo. And basically, when I did the graphical install, I used server admin as my user account. And so that's why you see server admin here. So basically, I'm going to give the server admin account privileges, basically the same as root. And then I go into the sources list. So if I were to do like apt update right now, basically it would break saying, oh, there's nothing in the CD-ROM drive. And I'm like, oh, great. So what this is I'm just using sed to just remove that from the sources list, but there's really nothing else in the sources list. So what I had to do is go here. So let me back up for a second though. So like I didn't have to imagine how to do all these things. So like if I back up Ludus and we go to the GitLab, and we go to Ludus over here, because that actually just went to the releases. I'm going to scroll down, and they have an area, docs. So definitely read the docs. Check out the docs. They've got a Ludus quick start. And then this is what I read to get through all the stuff. So like, for instance, here's the install Ludus. And so it does all the requirements. Again, this looks pretty familiar. Hey, Debian 12. Hey, have this many. I have 64 gigs in mine. And then it'll get into, we haven't got into this part yet where we grab the server binary. So we're doing a little pre stuff. So they don't go into, some of this stuff. But once we get to this part, I'll come back to here. So that's kind of why I'm making this workshop, is because they don't do everything. There's missing quite a few things. So yeah. So going back to this area, yeah, add this to the source list. So this stuff, all this stuff here goes in there. Then you could do an update, then do an upgrade, then do an install SSH, because we want to eventually SSH in from our other Debian that I mentioned earlier. And so this order is important, because like if you try to do this without doing, well, without having the package repo, it's not going to work. And for some reason, this either, if you don't do this, this won't work either. So I actually had to do these steps specifically to actually install this. So cool. Once that's done, again, we install the open SSH so that we can put some stuff via SSH. So I just use a sed command to basically permit my root login user, and I put it in the sshd underscore config file. And then same with password authentication. I'm like, hey, yes, do that, and put it in the same config file. And then if you typically have to restart sshd to allow SSHing to go on. So cool. That is pretty much all you needed to do to install the Debian 12 for our Ludus environment. So congratulations, we're done. And now we can go to lab 2. So I also add this clickable area down here. So you can just click on it and it'll bring you to lab 2. So lab 2, let's get into it. Install Ludus. So this is like what we all came for. So let's check it out. We're going to go ahead, and of course I say, hey, no, go to the docs, check it out. So here it is again, go to the docs, there's the docs. Read the docs, know the docs, love the docs. And so once you're there, basically, I already showed this, basically you can get to an area where the quick start is like grab the server and then run the server pretty much. So what we'll do, and it also talks about follow the quick start, but what we'll do is 1 and 2, these two things. And so if we go to grab the binary, we'll go back to this. So again, it's go back to this. We look for the server. Here's the server. It's 135. And actually, when I did it, it was at 134. So what you'll see eventually is like when you do some copy and paste, you'll see where I said 3.5 here, and you'll see screenshots that say 3.5 and like to get 3.5. But when you see the command to copy, to go ahead and just paste it into your like, for instance, I would have just this is what I use. I use Remote Desktop Manager, where I can just put a bunch of RDP or SSH and manage a bunch of machines in my Proxmox servers. And so what I would do is I would have this, and I would just I'd be able to copy and paste right into here. Super awesome, super cool. So yeah, you just copy right here and paste right into there. And get it going. So, but yeah, you'll see I did 3.4. I'm not going to change it for now. I'll change it later. So yeah, so this is how you could just grab it without going to the browser. Just wget it, put it on that Debian 12, and then of course you got to make it executable. So you got to make it executable, and then this is how you'd actually run it. So you'd run it. Weirdly enough, I would get this like configuration YAML error. I wish I actually did a screenshot of it, but it threw me for a loop. Like I tried 3 different things, and I finally was like, oh, you should probably just look at the YAML. And so I looked at the YAML. This is the YAML, and what looks off here in this YAML, y'all? Yeah, you guessed it, this line. So what I did is I just deleted that. I don't know why it was there. If it's, by the end of this talk, if it's still there, I'll probably submit an issue or something and say, hey, can you remove that? But as soon as I removed it, I was able to rerun, if we go back up here, rerun this command. And it didn't error out, and then it started looking like this: is only run Ludus install on a clean Debian 12 machine using the following configs. These look familiar, right? These are kind of like what it had before, minus that weirdness that it had. And then it just says, hey, do you want to install blah, blah, blah. This may reboot twice. FYI, that looks a little weird too, because like when it starts installing, you're like, cool, it's installing Proxmox. And then it like boots into what it looks like Debian. I'm like, wait, did it not work? And then it like, goes black, and then it keeps installing. And yeah, so don't worry if you see it go back to Debian briefly, it's part of the process. So yeah, right here I say, do I want to continue? I say, yeah, of course I do. And so the reason why I didn't do this live is because you have to do it on like 2 machines. So here's a screenshot of one of my my monitors running Ludus, and this is kind of what it looks like. And this is directly connected into my Nook, and it's just installing. And it says it'll reboot one more time. Great. So we've pretty much installed Ludus on Debian at this point. There's some things that are going to happen eventually, but congratulations. It's really that fast. Well, almost that fast. It'll take a little bit longer than me talking about it to go there. So let's go ahead and go to lab 3. This is where it gets tricky, and you have to have a different box. And so I just do the requirements. No, really, you do need a different machine. You do need SSH, which we installed. And please, again, read the docs. So here's the docs. Create a user. It talks about, hey, you need a Ludus client. And so we'll go into downloading the client, and then CPing it over to our bin area and renaming it to just Ludus. And then, of course, making it executable, and then creating a Ludus user, and so forth and so on. So I'll go back to the lab, though, and kind of show from my point of view how this looks. So basically, as you saw earlier,
Did we lose you, Jesse?
Yeah, the audio cut out.
I'll send
hello.
Jesse a message.
Okay.
Oh, there you are.
Hey,
Hello.
there he
Yep.
is.
Sorry, for some reason my headset decides to stop. So thanks for the patience.
Carry on.
All right, carrying on. So cool. So yeah, so I don't know how much you missed, but basically read the docs. And this is what it looks like from my perspective. Just a moment ago, you saw me actually get onto this machine. So here's the Ansible machine, which is a different Debian machine. And what I did is I obtained the client. So I basically said, copy this, went over here, I'll just do it right now. Went over here, right clicked on it, just like it did that, press enter, and boom, it downloads, and there it is. It's there. Here it is. As you can see, I already chmoded it as what I'll do right here. So I could have chmoded it just like that. Again, you could just copy it, and boom, you're in. And then what I do is I move it to the location for the path to run. So again, this is all nice copy and paste. And then I remind, I'm like, hey, this is terminal 1, very important. Terminal 1, this is the Ludus client, and we're going to create a Ludus server, and my user is server admin. Just being very clear here what's going on. So, because it gets really weird after I put in this command. So what this does, and I have a screenshot of it so you kind of see what happens. So as soon as I put in the command, it'll ask me for my password to the Ludus server machine, as if I'm SSHing into it, because I am. And then it'll just pop you right into it. So then all of a sudden, you don't have the Ansible ASCII art, and you're in Ludus as server admin. Right here is Ludus. So that's very important. What you also have to do is you have to go and escalate up to root. And so then you'll see me do that. Again, it'll ask you for the password. You do it, and then there you are, root. Done. Great. Okay. Now we'll have to create a user. You have to have this API key. And so how you get that is you have to be root, and you have to run this command, ludus-install-status. And so once you do that, your API key gets spit out. So here it is in a screenshot for everybody to not see what's in red for you. And you would copy that and you'll see what we do in terminal number 2. So we'd open up a terminal number 2, and that could just be as easy as I just duplicated this one and I just went into another terminal just like this, and that was just terminal number 2. And then I'd carry it on. And so what you would do is you would run this. This is this is the environment variable, and then you would put your API key. So notice that it doesn't have a tick here on the front, but in this code it does. So definitely make sure you have that there, and also at the end. And really just copy everything. Maybe change the name from my name to your name, and then the user ID to something that you want. But know that also this JM will also come up later. So like, I think I showed, we'll see it later. Basically, when I spin up VMs and stuff, it gets attached, the pool gets named JM. So know that this will show up later. So cool, once you do that, and again, this is a screenshot right here, mostly because I didn't want to show you my root key, but I kind of wanted to show you what it looked like also in the docs. So going through, here it is, I ran it, I scribbled out my key, then basically it spits out this thing saying, hey, here's the user ID, the username, admin true, and then you can't see it, but you kind of see it right here, and it spits out my API key. And then at that point, what you want to do is you want, if it's not already there, I think it is though, but I installed it anyways. Go ahead and install WireGuard, because that's another cool thing that this does. So not only does this automate installing Proxmox, adding templates for the various OSs, but then it also puts WireGuard in and it isolates the network for you. So that's super cool and very good for security. So once you've installed the WireGuard, then we want to create the config. And so this is how you would create the config. So earlier we created a user account with the API. That's where this comes into play. So we use, and so this is not mine. This, as you can see, JD kind of equals up to here, John Doe, JD. So this one's not mine, but you're free to try to use it. So basically you run this, and it'll create a WireGuard user, and then I basically output it to a comp file for a WireGuard comp file. So later on, what we'll do is we'll install on our host machine. I have a Windows host machine. I'll install WireGuard. I'll add a tunnel. It's called add a tunnel. I'll import it from a file, and it'll be this file that's spit out, which is this right here. And then I'll activate, and then I can actually access the isolated network. But I can't until I, activate my VPN, which is super secure. So yeah, so once you run this command, as shown here, this piece, interface and peer, kind of pop out with your private key and your public key. And the only thing I would say you'd have to change is this allowed IP if you need to adjust that for, let's say, your network, I believe. Hang on, let's double check. Actually, nope, you don't. You can keep it as is, actually. You can keep it as is. So cool. So basically what I did with this is I put this comp file somewhere on my Windows box, and as you saw, I put it in my WireGuard. So we'll save that for later, but basically I did the command, it spit out my private key, I did all this stuff, this kind of showing like I really did do it. And then here's that screenshot of my WireGuard and going to activate it and that kind of stuff. So one of the things that I ran into when trying to do my API key from earlier, it actually would not work well. So I had to export it this way for it to work. There's another, in the instructions, there's another way to put your API key in your keyring, but it wasn't working, so I had to do this export deal. And it's very important. Otherwise, this Ludus templates list command will not work, unfortunately. And so that's what I did. Just do that. Again, this is not my key, but it's here just so that you could just replace that for yours when the time comes. So as you can see, there's my JM. I exported it, and then when you do the Ludus templates, mine says true right now, but they will say false. For the first time, they will say false. And so you don't have any of these templates. No Debian 11, 12, Kali, Windows 11, Windows 22, nothing. So how you get those to turn true is in the build templates lab. So here we go. Let's do it. So congratulations. We've made it through another lab. All right. So I think we might go through all these labs within an hour. So that'll be fantastic. Yeah. So let's do it. So here our goal is to build that stuff that we saw that said true, but it really wasn't. That's our goal here. We're gonna build those templates. We're gonna add templates. So again, copy paste from over here, paste it in, and then you can see your templates. It'll say false here. You might get, okay, this is where I go into, oh, here's the error that I got. So I got this error, fatal, no Ludus API key found, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, what? I totally gave you my key. And so I was like, fine, okay, I got to do this whole export deal. And so I did that. And once I did it, I was able to use the Ludus template list again. So yeah, so I'm kind of showing, actually the screenshots also shows another thing I did. So in 1, 2, and 3, I was doing it wrong. So like for instance, in 1, it just didn't work. In number 2, as you can see here, there's a root key. I was not supposed to use the Ludus API root key. So that was a no-no. So of course on 3 that errored out. And then down here on 4, I actually used my user key that I created earlier. And then that actually let number 5 go, which is this template list. So this was an issue, but I just had to call this out because I had issues. So cool. The next thing really is just Ludus template build. Once you start doing that, it'll just say, hey, yep, the building started. This is going to take a while. Go have some coffee, go drink some juice, do whatever you're going to do. And so I was like, well, I kind of want to know. So I went back to the documentation. So if I looked in the documentation on like build templates, then I was like, okay, here it is, logs. I can actually see in the logs how it's doing. So that's cool. So that's what I ended up doing. So you just copy this, paste it in, and then you can see, oh, it looks like the ISO is stopping a VM. It looks like it's converting a VM to a template. It looks like, it's dealing with a Windows 2022. It looks like it's doing things, right? And so that's really cool that we can actually watch these things go by. And then eventually, we'll end up with this. We'll end up with all these templates. So the Debian 11, Kali, Windows, all that kind of stuff. And hey, there's that JM thing that I mentioned will pop up again. So it's its own pool. And that's how that looks. So really, building templates is really easy. A couple commands. So boom, we're done again. And let's go to the kind of fun, exciting part. And that's to actually deploy the range so that we can just get started doing whatever real tasks that we need to do. Because 90% of security research is just getting these environments set up, or at least that's what it says here in this Ludus introduction from somebody that tweeted it back in 2021. Yeah. So let's deploy the range. So again, I say, hey, let's read the docs, read it. That's great. It'll do a bunch of stuff. But again, I kind of show what I did. And so back on my Ansible box, I did that whole SSH deal. And basically it brings me into Ludus. And so here I am in Ludus. And then as soon as I do the command like they mentioned in here, up here, I get greeted with this fatal deal. And so I'm like, that again. And so again, I have to export this API key. That's this user that we created earlier for it to actually work. And so then I did it again, and then it works. And so it spit out basically the config. And so at the top of the config, it's like, hey, the VM name is this Windows 2022. The host name is gonna be something like DC1 2022. The template name is this, so forth and so on. I just cut that. It just goes into all the things, but that's what that does. And do I have? Okay. So yeah, to get that, you just copy that. So here is though. Here's the default range. So if you didn't like the cutoff that I gave you, you can look at it here. So here's the full. It comes default. So this, here's the config. Basically, again, 2022. It goes into like, hey, VLAN 10. IP address, last octet 11, CPUs are going to be 4. RAM, by the way, I changed these to 4 because I don't know why I would need it to be 8 in my test range. So I changed that one, and then my Windows 11, I'm like, no, you can be 4 gigs of RAM too, so no need for that, right? And like CPUs don't need to be that high either. Anyways, so what's also really cool is you could just change this config before you run it, and so then it'll take these settings. So people that are used to like CloudFormation or maybe Terraform, this might look a little familiar of like, oh, it's kind of some syntaxy way to put your configs in on how you want to build your machine. So pretty cool, very configurable. It goes down into the network of like, hey, these are the rules for the Kali box. We're going to allow this. Oh no, this is on the Windows box. Sorry, this is on the Windows box, allowing it from Windows to Kali. And then, it has all the rules and stuff. Not very many. So, but if you want to learn more, they have docs. They have the whole configuration docs. If you want the actual like, oh, what does this VLAN thing mean? And they actually tell you, hey, this is for VLAN for the VM. This number will be the so forth and so on, kind of thing. So if you're into learning, check it out. It's neat. And then you can. Okay, so I talked about changing earlier, but here I'm talking about this is the actual like workflow you would go to change it. So you would actually say, hey, get that config that we just looked at, put it into this. Okay, cool. Then we'll like whatever your choice is, VI, Vim, Nano, whatever it is, and then do the config. But it's weird that it's this config here. You should just do that. And then you do the Ludus range config set, and then you do the config. And that'll actually, once you've changed the config, that'll actually set it as like, okay, this is what's going to be run. And so once that's done and you're like, yeah, I changed, all these things from CPU to 2, RAM to 4, and I think that's good. So I'll do, this Ludus range config set -f and then to my config file. So ready to rock. Then I put in Ludus range deploy. Just, okay, down here, deploy, and then it says, hey, it's starting. So this takes a little while because it's deploying a range, but by the end of it, you're able to, not the end of it, during it, you can go ahead and you can just go to basically 8006 port of whatever your Ludus server's IP address is, and then you can watch like, oh, I see that a VM spun up here because it's a different icon than this template icons that you see here. This is a VM. You can see, okay, it's only gotten to that. Okay, great. And then go maybe refresh a little bit later. Oh, cool, it got to this one. Yay. Great. And then you can like look at the pool view as well. So like pool view is right here, the drop down. So if I scroll back up, you can see I was in server view from this drop down. And that's what gave me this view. But if we want to do pool view, you could do that as well. And I do this because the templates are typically in this shared pool. So that's where you would find that. And then to really check your range of status on the command line, you would just run this command. And then it would spit out this saying, hey, it's still deploying. So you're just going to have to be patient. And then here are the VMs currently getting powered on. And by the time I ran this and did these screenshots, then it went from the 2 that you saw earlier to this third one being powered on. So it goes pretty quick. And so just like earlier with the templates, you can also do a Ludus range logs, and it'll show you details like, oh, no, it's installing Active Directory. Hey, it's disabling the password policy. Hey, it's setting DNS. Hey, it just kind of shows you everything it's doing. And by the way, This is, if people were like looking at this, go, this is very Ansible-esque. Well, because it is. And to that end, by the end of it, it shows what Ansible shows, and that's like, hey, 51 things went through just fine, 31 things changed. I think I ran this twice. And then nothing failed. Ideally, you want nothing failed is really the deal here. And then it would be successful, kind of a deal. So I ran the range status again just to show like, hey, this is what, when it's done, this is what it looks like. It has the success in green like that, has the number of VMs, and then it has the names and the IP addresses of them. So that's cool, that's great, neat. But like, all right, I can't get to these now when I like pull up this thing. I'm like, how do I get to this box right here, Windows 11? Can I just go to it? Let's see here, connect. Well, it doesn't look like I'm getting to it. That's lame. I'm pretty sure that I put the right IP. 21? Let's look. 21, yep, Windows 11. Okay, what's going on? So this is where the WireGuard comes into play. So I have the commands for that. We went over kind of like what that file looks like. And then here's some extra information on RDP stuff. And then down at the bottom here are the default creds for all the default configs. But I also wanted to show the screenshot of me actually using WireGuard, or you could just see me do it now. I can just say activate. It's activated. If I go back here and I click on it, that showed up right away. So that's really great. And then here we are. We're here. We're inside our isolated VM network via Proxmox, via Ludus, via, let's deactivate this, WireGuard. So cool. So that kind of gets you all the way to actually accessing a box, and that is super cool in my opinion. So we're pretty much done for this presentation, but I do have a link here that says, hey, go to this guide here where you can deploy more ranges. So like you can do, if you want to do like exploit on certificates, Active Directory certificate services, they have a range for that. If you want to do like, you want to spin up Elastic, they have one for that. If you want to do the cool GoID with SCCM, and you want to like test out how SCCM works, or how to exploit SCCM rather, then you can deploy via that. Or hey, there's that latest XZ backdoor malware. If you want to create your own malware lab, boom, they got a configuration file to deploy that. And then what I really like is this game of Active Directory, GOAD. That one seems like a pretty cool one. I'll kind of show what that looks like right here. Like the
I
thing
think we
turned
just
off
lost.
again.
There you go.
Yep, I'm back. Sorry about that. So yeah, this is GOAD, really big environment to have a lot of fun in. So back to here. So yeah, I encourage for those that walk through my my workshop to, if you want to explore even more, explore these how-tos, and they're really, there are probably some gotchas, kind of like I showed some gotchas along the way. But I haven't fully vetted all these, so I'm not gonna speak to them. Yeah, not gonna speak to them. So let's go back out. So really, yep, that was all the way to lab 6, deploy an alternate range, or actually lab 5, where we got to get down to, hey, you could deploy an alternate range. I'm working on lab 6, deploying an alternate range. I think I'm doing game of Active Directories. So cool. So you've made it to the end of my talk. I've done it in probably an hour, I think. And I hope this helps people out there spin up a brand new virtual home lab. So with that, I'm going to go back to my slides. I'm going to click here saying thank you so much. Do you have any questions? And while you have questions, I'm going to say, hey, for those out on internet, here's our Discord. Please join. And then on Twitter, this is me. I typically just kind of retweet things from other like offensive security people or defenders. So with that, I'll open it up for questions. Hey, thank you. I know it's a lot.
Yeah, great talk. Jesse, this is exciting, especially that it plugs into Proxmox. There was a tool I used to use in the past, and I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. I know it was made by the Palantir guys. About a kind of like a one-click deploy lab solution, but they disbanded that project. So this is really awesome to see that this is a new solution, especially that it uses Ansible and it's all automated. So yeah, bravo, great talk.
Hey, thanks a lot, Sean. Yeah, no, and I've like tried to like automate it with like Packer and Terraform and do all these things to automate it in a different way, and even Ansible, and I couldn't find like something as smooth as Ludus. So far, this has been like the smoothest automation I've seen. I love it.
How long have you been using this for?
I've been using Ludus. I just basically last week and last 2 weeks or so, or no, not very long. Let's put it that way. Not very long. Yeah, because I mean it's for really first time users, right? Now that I'm showing first time home lab deployers how to do it, the real fun comes in deploying all those other labs, and that's why I had that 6 that I was kind of working on, right? Deploy alternate labs, but it's not quite ready. But eventually, I have stuff here, but I don't think it's production ready yet. But I mean, you all have this, so you can, do with it what you will. But eventually, I want to be able to make it so that everyone can go ahead and spin up these alternate labs super easy and know about any pitfalls ahead of time.
That is awesome, Jesse.
Thanks, man.
Does anybody have any questions for Jesse?
Like, I'm not sure, but hey, Mac, do you have questions? I think you were trying to do some automation.
Yeah, I was trying to formulate this. Like, I've been a VMware guy forever, and so I'm just starting to use Proxmox for the first time at home. And I just have I don't have a lot of hardware here. I have like an Underage server that I have all my stuff on, but I just got these two like liter-sized PCs to try to start doing. I was gonna do like a Proxmox quorum. So does Ludus like it installs Proxmox and then sets up these machines, and then is the goal to like wipe everything at the end? So I'm wondering if like I'm gonna have a persistent Proxmox environment, or should I just like dedicate one piece, like one hardware PC to this? Right? Because like I'm playing with Waza too, and I don't know if is there any persistence to this, I guess I should say? Or does it just put up the lab and then take it down? Can I have more than one lab running at the same time?
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so I think
Yeah.
you could definitely have more labs, and basically I would pull them out. Like this one's JM. I would go ahead and I would go here, and then there's a pools area, this thing, and I would say like, this is my monitoring lab, and then I would put all my monitoring stuff, or really what I'm gonna probably end up doing is I'm gonna say create. I'm gonna have my Goad lab, and then I'm going to deploy this this lab right here, and I'm going to deploy it to that pool, and then right, and then I could delete it if I want, but I can also redeploy it over and over using
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I thought I saw it in the beginning, Proxmox being installed through this process too, but it was probably just your instructions to install Proxmox. I got a little distracted here at the beginning, so I'm definitely have to rewatch the whole thing. But it was really great, and I really appreciate this. I was just the beginning of trying to figure out how to automate this when somebody here told me that you were working on this presentation, so I stopped and waited.
Nice. Yeah, cool. Well, yes, hopefully this will all work out for you. And yeah, it does actually, Ludus does install Proxmox auto-magically for you
Okay.
in the beginning. But once all that beginning stuff is done, basically you would go to the deploy range lab 5 area, and basically you would just deploy different ranges. You just, you know, pick a config file you wanted, and then you would deploy it.
Cool.
And you would just change the one config file to whatever one you want, and then it would deploy whatever you want next. And then you can switch it. Yeah.
This feels like a dumb question too, but the two Debian machines in the beginning, are they physical machines? Are they VMs, or it doesn't matter?
Yeah. So there's no dumb questions, number one. Number two,
Yeah.
I would say that, let's see here. Where is this? So so one machine was my Nook. That was what I ran Ludus on, that I installed Debian, that actually installed the Proxmox on it, and then installed all the VMs and templates on it. But the other Debian that I needed, it was actually on my other Proxmox that I have, which was on this box and this box really. But yeah, I just SSH to the one on my other Proxmox. It could be anything. You could have another hardware Debian, or it could be out in AWS, or it could be anywhere. But it just has to be a different box. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, like I have Workstation installed on my laptop. I could create two VMs
There
as
you
long
go.
as they're separate operating systems. Okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood that.
Yeah, it tripped me up too, man. I was showing those fatal errors. Oh my gosh, it tripped me up so much. You definitely have to have a different box, and you definitely have to create a different user on the different box. It's just it's a security feature that they don't really explain, but you just gotta roll with it and be like, fine, I'll just do what you want me to do. But ultimately, that second Debian is really only there to create that API key that you use later in Ludus environment. So yeah, you won't need that machine pretty much once your Proxmox is up and going, and then you want to just redeploy stuff or new deployments and put those in different pools. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, thank you. That was awesome.
Right on.
Hey Jesse, do you know if this works with AWS by chance? I know in the docs it doesn't look like there's any mentions of AWS, but I was just curious if you played around with that.
Yeah, it is in the docs. I did read it a little bit. There's I forget the exact deal, but bare metal, there was some specifications. I didn't know how to really get it going, so I didn't end up doing it. But yeah, it's right here. It's this bare metal one. Where is it? Oh wait, there's Azure, of course. There's GCP, and oh, maybe they don't have AWS. I could have swore they had AWS. So maybe that's why I didn't do it, because it was it's in Azure and Google Cloud, and they seemed a little more difficult. Like this whole Azure seemed more difficult to me to get going, and I know nothing about Google Cloud, so that right off the bat is too hard for me. And then they talked about using Terraform, and I'm like, I'm not 100% with that. So yeah. So long story short, it's in the docs. But I didn't actually install it in AWS, and it looks like there's not a thing in AWS after all.
Maybe it's a feature request.
Right?
Or pull request.
Yeah.
Cool. Any other questions for Jesse?
I do.
Great.
So you were saying about the differences between Azure and Google Cloud Platform, about how they have their Ludus set up.
Okay.
Like, what's the difference between the how you would set up Ludus in Azure, and what would you use it for?
Yeah, I don't have a lot of experience. Just like hopefully I'm sharing my screen. Am I still sharing my screen? Can people see the?
Yeah, you are.
Okay,
Yep.
cool. Yeah, so like with Azure, it just to me it was hard to understand what an E4BS version 5 was, right? How and that it cost $260 a month to run. And then I looked down here and I'm like, yeah, this actually after $260 a month, I was like, I don't think I'm gonna try that. And then so when comparing it to GCP, the only reason I didn't really look at GCP is I don't know enough about it. So, and then I looked at it and I was like, yeah, I really don't know enough about it to get started with it. So I didn't. So yeah, I don't have a really good comparison there for you. But check out the docs. You read through them and you could come to some conclusions. Probably better than me.
I have a question for you.
Yeah, what's up, Warlock?
So yeah, I got a little bit lost in the beginning, right? But it's like I guess I'm
What?
trying to figure out trying to figure out like basically the use case for this. So yeah, I guess the idea is if you want to set up some sort of a home lab in that you want to just have an automated control of setting up, I don't know, a home lab for like this, like you had a bunch of different use cases, right? You know, I guess you had different pools set up in Proxmox, right? But it looks like this is basically kind of, I don't know, cloud or tech agnostic, right? Because you could deploy it in Proxmox or, you know, hopefully somebody put an AWS thing here. But the idea is like, I'm going to create this little pool of machines, set up a little network according to these specifications, and I want it to, in an automated sense, you know, set it up, do some stuff, maybe tear it down. But the idea is basically because you're controlling it live in a sort of a, I guess, cloud agnostic way, right? Is that the kind of use case of like what Ludus is for?
Cloud agnostic.
Like
I
it's like
mean,
it doesn't matter like if you deploy it in Azure or Hyper-V or Proxmox or whatever they want, right?
right, yeah, like the screen I'm showing. Yeah, you could put it in Hyper-V, a bare metal somewhere out there in the cloud, Azure, Google Cloud. So yeah, with the bare metal, like you probably can run through my whole setup, but through the bare metal through AWS, I'm assuming, right? If AWS has some kind of bare metal, VMs that, and I'm sure they do, then you probably could run through my whole setup and get it going.
So this was
Yeah.
kind of occupies a similar space to something, I don't know, like Terraform, right? In that you do all your stuff within Ludus and you wanted to kind of be sort of destination agnostic, but yet controlled the same way.
Ooh, I don't know because I haven't had a chance to do it through like VMware Fusion, Hyper-V, all these other areas. They look different, so I'm not quite sure about that. I mostly did it because again, I was trying to get away from the cloud as far as money, and I was trying to bring it to myself locally in my portable Nook thing so that I could, yeah, not have
So,
cloud costs.
so I mean, it looks like this is Ansible centric or like built on Ansible, right? So it's sort of like if you wanted to use Ansible to deploy a lab that's specific for, you know, one particular purpose, because they have all these different guides. It's like you could do it in Azure, you could do it in Proxmox. You know, if somebody created a guide for AWS, you could do it in AWS. But the interface of what you're dealing with is literally like these Ludus commands, which is really just layered on top of Ansible. Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say. Yeah, absolutely fair to say. Yeah, and so like if I click on here, I can show you the Ansible. So if we go Ludus, and let's see, I want to say they'd be under
Like instead of using something like Terraform, you could just literally just use Ansible. But this is like the thing layered on top of Ansible that would let you do that.
Yeah, I don't know 100%, but it does use Ansible. I know it does use Ansible, um, and it uses Packer. There's Ansible there. So yeah, Packer, Ansible. So Packer, you could think of that's kind of like Terraform-ish. It's another way to, well,
I mean,
it
you said
actually builds VMs, but
because you said you were like looking into other technologies, right? Like you know, like how do I do this? You know, I think you mentioned Terraform. You're like, oh, I could do it with this, do it
Oh,
with
yeah.
that, and you ended up using Ludus,
Right.
which is
Yes.
basically Ansible.
Yes. Yes.
Okay,
Absolutely.
right on.
Yeah.
And I would say, and I would say it's cloud agnostic because when we say cloud, we typically mean something like AWS or Azure or something, right? But literally, you can have your own personal cloud, which is what Proxmox essentially is.
Right, and you're right, yeah, because the Ludus is using Ansible, which can just be, yeah, it automates everything, and it doesn't matter where you're at. Like you
Because
said,
like
yeah.
mentally, when I think of like a tool that's a cloud agnostic, like go do the thing, orchestrate. It's like orchestration, right? So this is basically in the same category as something like Terraform.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, once you've got the Terraform basically, which builds up your Proxmox, basically one time, then it basically uses Ansible to spin up your templates, and then it's using Ansible, and I guess you could think of it as Terraform to then take these machines and throw them into that range, right, to make your infrastructure. So yeah, it's kind of like Terraform, where Terraform is like, hey, here's your whole infrastructure with all your VMs.
Yeah,
So
because like if I was doing this, if you're gonna do this in like like if you're working for a company and you wanted to kind of manipulate infrastructure, right? And their flavor of what they like, they're just specifically AWS only. You might do CloudFormation, but CloudFormation is not going to help you in Azure.
Right.
So having something that's sort of occupies the same space as something like Terraform allows you to be cloud agnostic, and just say, take this cluster of machines. I got this, definition of them. Go create it.
Right. However, you're kind of stuck with Proxmox in this situation. In all the different cloud areas, you're stuck in Proxmox.
So like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, because I mean, I run Proxmox myself, but I do it bare metal, right? And I guess Ludus could take control of this, right? But you're saying that if you did it in Azure or in, I guess, AWS, if somebody had a guide for it, then literally you're using Proxmox in Azure.
Yep, it's basically you're gonna get like a bare metal wherever it is in any cloud. You're gonna put Debian 12 on it, and then you're gonna run Ludus against that Debian 12, and it's gonna build out this Proxmox environment that you see, and then from there, then you're using the Ludus commands to build out your different ranges.
So Ludus is literally built to just control Proxmox wherever you deploy it.
Sort of, yeah.
Okay.
Mostly it's to get a home lab going really quick, right? It automates building the whole Proxmox, building the templates, and then deploying out VMs.
So Ludus, it's like in an AWS sense, right? Ludus would talk to a VM that's running, whatever. What do they call it in AWS? EC2, an EC2 instance running Proxmox. Right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Oh, okay. There you go.
Ludus would. Yeah, I think you're confusing me a little bit, but.
Well, it's like Proxmox runs on a. In this case, it'd be like Debian, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and that's Proxmox, right? So as long as you had a VM in that whatever, either it's bare metal or in the case of Azure, you'd have that EBS, whatever volume, I guess. It's a virtual machine. That's the thing that runs Proxmox.
Right. Yep.
Okay, so in an AWS sense, it would be like an EC2 instance.
Right. Yep. But
Okay.
yeah, I don't know what
All
they're really calling for bare metal, but yeah.
Okay. I'm just trying to like piece the technology together and kind of see what it compares against if you were to reach out for a different tool and do it. If you didn't have Ludus and you wanted to be kind of cloud agnostic, you'd be using Terraform. But this lets you use something that's Ansible based. So, all right, cool. Next.
Yep. Cool. All right,
we
Sean,
should probably wrap this up.